Canada. And yeah, so I'm from just outside Halifax, where of course the recovery effort was the main part of our maritime marine history when it comes to Titanic, a White Star. And I had the honor and pleasure to work with Victoria on on her book, which was great. And I'm just adjusting my screen, sorry.
No
And
worries.
yeah, so I have my book with all my little
Yes.
flags and things that I go back and reference, of course.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was a very interesting project to work on, because what we're seeing now with books like this is that people are writing on more specific aspects of the Titanic history. So this is really nice to see this.
Mhm. I agree with you. I think that's the best, like, kind of route to go at this point because, the general information or story I think has definitely been covered well by some great authors. And I think, like, taking deeper dives into specific focuses, I think that is definitely, definitely the way. Are you now? Am I wrong? Are you working on a book at all or no?
Well, I've been technically working on a book for years, and
Oh
I've
my god.
been pulled away with a lot of other Titanic-related projects because I'm also a Titanic Society of Atlantic Canada president. So
Yes.
always busy, always never a dull moment. And I do
Yes.
I do
Yes.
a lot of research myself and help other people with research. So yes, my goal is to certainly do that, share my experiences, the places that I have been, especially being living in the Halifax
Yes.
area, spending a lot of
Yes.
time at the three cemeteries, for example, and also being from Newfoundland. So,
Yes,
Wow.
that will be awesome, definitely.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
well,
I
I'm
said,
glad you're here with us today.
me too. My husband's here. It's just gonna be a brief peek in. Some people who know
Okay,
Neil in the
hi there.
community.
Hello.
Yes, that's awesome. Thank you for joining.
Oh, no worries. I'm
And I'm
glad that I
sure
was
that
able to be here.
yes, and I'm sure there will be things that will probably come up that you might, be able to contact or comment more on as we go through the questions here too, for sure. So,
That sounds great. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you. Lauren, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Right, I'm not very experienced with Zoom, so um so I'm Lauren, and I'm part of the admin team at the book club. I help with the Facebook page, as some of you might know. Um, I have read the book, The Death Ship, and I thought it was really really great read.
Oh, you mean when I went to Amazon, they said it wouldn't be available until like next year. I
Yeah,
went
that's
to
that's
Chicago.
for United States right now.
Yeah, I,
But
I, I think I think you might be able to get it on an ebook. Um, so I'm not sure, but I got it on Kindle, so but
Yeah,
yeah,
most of my Titanic stuff is on Kindle, and we need to establish a book club night where we all read the same book. Because that's the only way I'll remember what I have on Kindle versus what I have in real physical matter, form, real book form.
yes. I was saying earlier on though, I did find a website called Moby the Great. So if you're in the United States and you are good with physical copies, that one actually did send over to the United States, and it didn't cost like a lot of extra either. Like I think it was just like a normal delivery fee I paid, nothing like, super expensive sending it over here. So just so everybody knows that, of course, if you're in the United States. So
May I ask? I don't know if that would apply to Canada or not. I know that Canada fits with the United States with not having distribution here until 2026, but I'm wondering if Moby the
yes,
Great would send to Canada. Because if
I
they will,
I
I would let
think
people
so.
know. Yeah.
I think so because it didn't really say anything about, like, when I put in my address and everything, it wasn't like, oh, you can only send it here. So definitely worth trying. So yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Yes, no problem. I hope I'm gonna say her name right, but Mirth? Is that how you say it? Mirth?
Actually.
Yes. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, it's been a while that I joined Titanic meetings, but I'm from Belgium and I'm happy to
Yes.
join again today. And
Yes.
I'm a great Titanic fan, and Titanic really is my life and my passion actually. And I have 11 books of Titanic now, and I am researching several things on my own. And one of my great big dreams in life is actually to do the Titanic transatlantic crossing from England to America one day.
Oh, nice. Yes.
So yes.
That would be on the. Is it the Queen Mary? Is that
Queen Mary 2.
The Queen Mary tour, yes.
Yes, the Queen Mary 2. Yes, yes.
Yes.
I'm actually going to be doing that next year, so
Oh my gosh, that's exciting.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Wow, yes.
I want to do it, but not alone, and actually with other Titanic enthusiasts who want to join. So, but I don't know with who and when. So yeah.
Yes.
I aspire to
That
do the
sounds
same.
awesome.
My husband and I are hoping to do a transatlantic crossing on Queen Mary too as well. That's our goal.
Very cool, yes.
Mm.
Has anyone here done that yet?
I want to.
Yeah. I know Joshua has. He did that probably like a couple years ago, and it seemed like he really enjoyed himself. So
How's Joshua?
I I have gotten off of Facebook for reasons that I will, let's just say, the things going on in the world right now. I've decided to just take a break for a while.
Oh my
So
god, yeah, sorry.
yeah. As
He
far
You're
as I know,
went
he's
messed
doing
up
good though.
everything.
Yeah, as far as I know, he's doing good though.
good.
Do you know Jill? I don't know if she's able to talk right now, but I think he's doing okay as far as I know. Or Lauren, you might know. Have you heard much from him?
Who's this?
Joshua Anderson?
No, I haven't.
Okay, yes. Well, I see Victoria, the author of The Death Ship, has joined, and I'm Charlotte, Victoria, because I know you don't know me, you know, by video. You just know me on our contacts so far. So
Yeah, good to meet you, sort of properly.
yes, yes. We were just doing some quick introductions, and then we'll kind of get into the questions. I was just kind of giving, everyone a chance to just do a short introduction, and then we'll allow. So, just so everybody knows the way that we're going to do this, just very laid back, allow everybody to ask questions, whether you have, because some people in the United States haven't had a chance to read it. I did tell them that website that I told you about, Moby the Great, that did send it over quickly and didn't charge me a lot of extra for delivery or anything. So I let them know. And Dee mentioned even with Canada too, so that might be good for if anybody's, looking from there as well. But yeah, so just everybody can have a chance to just kind of ask any questions you might have, whether you read it or not. Maybe you haven't read it, but you could still definitely, ask any question you might have that you might be interested in about the topic before you read it. So let's just go through. I introduced Lauren, and you know Dee because I know you guys have worked, together. And
Yeah.
Mirth introduced herself. So let's just do a quick introduction, and then we'll definitely go into the question. So, Jill, are you? She might be. I think she's like working right now. But Maverick, did you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Maverick. I'm a Titanic enthusiast, ticket or Titanic artist. Actually, did the piece that's behind me here. I've been drawing Titanic on canvas or paper since the ages of 3 and on up. It's always a major hot point topic for me. Something that I'm just what other people have told me in the past, that I seem to possess a considerable amount of knowledge. It's just a passion, you know. It's something that I have an interest and respect for.
Very nice. Thank you, Maverick.
Welcome.
Paul, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Paul.
Hello.
I'm dialing in from Middle England.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's great to be with everybody. Quite often I see these invites and I go online and check out what time zone that'll be for me, and it's often like 3 a.m.
Yes.
So,
I
yeah.
feel
We
you.
tried to do it. We tried to do it a little bit earlier today, and I'm going to try to keep doing that too.
So yeah, really great to be here. Get all the newsletters, everything. So I've been interested in the Titanic since I was probably, I think, about the age of 7, when my grandfather passed away, and we found a copy of a newspaper from the day the Titanic sank that he'd kept in his attic, and that got passed down to me, and it sparked a lifelong interest, really. So yeah, looking forward to being able to join you here, and being in the UK, I have got my copy. Hooray! There we
Very
go.
awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
for joining us. Yes. Awesome. And then if I say anyone's name wrong, please just let me know, but because I'm not great with pronunciations to begin with, so I'm quite sure I'm going to butcher somebody's name here, but Laureen, is that how you say it?
I'm guessing that's me. It's Lorian, like
Lorian,
DeLorean
okay.
or Lothlorien
Yes, yes.
or Dorian, but Lorian.
Got you. Yes.
I have been an enthusiast since I can remember. One of my first books when I was young was Robert Ballard's Titanic book, because I was all into the mysteries and anything. And I am now a substitute teacher in the United States, and I've been traveling around the world lately, going to all different Titanic sites related to not only the ship itself, but its passengers and its people, and even the remote random things. Like, for example, Oscar Woody's post office, which is dedicated to him, is right in his hometown of Roxborough, North Carolina, like an hour away from me.
Oh wow, that is so
Very cool.
awesome. Yes. Very neat. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Awesome. And then Michelle? Uh-oh.
Oh. Yeah, me?
Yes.
Yes. Hello. So I'm from California. I was at the Queen Mary event. The first book that got me interested was this one, an old one from my grandpa. And I read this one too. I want to read the book in question, but I haven't yet. I did read a mystery about it once, a fictional mystery about the death ship. So I am interested in the topic, and I watched a video about it. I just still sort of am trying to get interest. I am interested. I'm just trying to like learn more, and then I probably eventually will read it. So
very cool. Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. Now, really quick, Victoria, do you have just to check, because I know you probably have, you know, a schedule. Do you have a certain amount of time that you're, like, our Zoom is fortunately able to go on, but I wanted to make sure what you do have a certain amount of time you're able to talk today?
Yeah, I'm completely free today, so just take as long as you need.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure, because we definitely want to get, you know, to the questions, but yeah, awesome. So, and then I see somebody named Carol. Are you there? Okay. If you are, just let us know. Craig?
Hi, I'm Craig Sopin, joining in from a hotel room in Virginia.
Oh,
And
neat.
my
Okay.
My Titanic story is a little bit different than most. I didn't get interested from reading a book or watching a movie. I just happened to be walking by a library one day as a child and saw a headline in the window that said Titanic sinks on its maiden voyage. That sort of pulled me in because of the irony of not only this large ship sinking, but it happening on its maiden voyage. And I collected an autograph at first of Melvina Dean, and I learned a little bit about her because I had her autograph. And I continue to collect in order to learn. I love to learn, and each thing I acquire is another learning experience for me. I read The Death Ship, was very enthralled about it. I do have a large body recovery Halifax collection of items. So that interested me because you don't see much written on the topic that no one really talks about. People think the Titanic ended with the sinking, and some parts of the story actually began then. So that was an interesting part of the story for me.
Very cool. That sounds awesome. And I agree with you on that too. I think it's something that it definitely is not as talked about as much. So yes, very neat. And then let's see here. I think next is Melissa, from what I see.
I have my camera off because nobody needs to watch me eat breakfast. But yeah. So when I was little, I used to go to the library a lot, and I stumbled on the book A Night to Remember, and I read it, and I was fascinated, and at the same time, there was a late night movie on, and my mom's like, "Oh, it's about the Titanic." I'm like, "Oh, that was in the book." And I went and watched the movie, and I was like, just enthralled by the whole movie. And I kept wanting the ship not to sink, even though I knew from the book what would happen. And I kept taking the book out over and over again. So finally, the librarian, excuse me, made a present of it to me because I was always taking it out. And was like literally the only one taking the book out. So, and then it just went from there, basically.
Very cool. Yes. That is awesome.
Let's see, is my microphone on? I would have loved it if the video store had given me some of my favorite movies that I checked out over and over.
Yes. Yeah, that's really nice that they did that for sure. So, well, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Melissa. And then I see the next person is Scott. He has a very nice book collection, it looks like, behind him. Yes.
That's part of my library.
Yes.
Hi. Scott McKinley. I'm in New Jersey. I grew up at the Jersey Shore, and I'd always been interested in ships as a result of that. My first introduction to the Titanic was from a librarian who said, "I think you might like this," and handed me the large print edition of A Night to Remember, which was illustrated, unlike all the regular hardcover editions. And I was just amazed that something that big could sink. Just as I was amazed, I was near Lakehurst, New Jersey, something that big could float, the Zeppelins and the airships. And I was a bookstore manager for many years, and I was working for Walden Books when Ballard discovered the Titanic and got to see all of the books as they came out, all the way through when Titanic, the movie, came out in '97. And I remember having some of the only books left because the publishers were taken quite unawares of just how popular the subject would be when the film came out. And I was the only one back then in the pre-computer age who knew the titles of the Titanic books that didn't have the word Titanic in them, like A Night to Remember. Because all the ones with the Titanic had sold out of all the Ingrams and the other distributors like that. And now I narrate audiobooks, and I'm a voice actor.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Oh, I thought I heard your voice before.
Yeah. Your voice, I can definitely imagine that because it's very, it has that kind of tone. I could definitely imagine that. So that's awesome. Yes. Well, thank you for joining us. And I love your background, definitely.
Thank you. I've got some of my Titanic collection on the top shelf of the oversized books.
Very cool.
All of the rest.
Awesome. Well, glad you are here today for sure. Awesome. And then Connie, are you available, or did you want to introduce yourself?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Connie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm getting ready to go out and clean the pool when we're done here. So I'm just looking a little of a mess, but I'm calling from St.
No.
Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, Missouri. And I really don't have a background. I'm just a Titanic geek. That's all. And
That's
I do try to read as much as I can. I'm in the legal field, so I spend a lot of time reading. And so I don't get a chance that often, but yeah, I watch every documentary that comes out, and I'm just glad to be here. That's all. I was very interested.
Very awesome. We're glad you're here for sure. So great. And then Rebecca, I haven't talked to you in a while. Are you there? Okay. I think if she comes on later, we'll definitely let her introduce herself. I'm glad she's here though. And then Jordan, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jordan. I'm kind of the baby of the group. Is my microphone okay? My screen turns green and then it turns off.
Okay.
I don't have much experience with Zoom. I did, however, use it for some community college application stuff. And, well, anyway, I got into it through something you probably never heard of, Titanic the musical. And
Oh, I've
it
heard of
was
that.
really
Yep.
focused on, like, describing how it happened to the best of its ability, probably. I mean, the movie was released 2 months later, so some of the information may not be accurate, but I was very drawn to its theory of like privilege, being that there were like 3 classes of passengers on the ship, and like who survived kind of depended on how much money you had. Which was made very clear. And if you can see my pronouns on the screen, I do have he here, so if you're not, familiar with Z or Faye, like, he is perfectly fine. Just wanted to make that clear to Victoria.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for clarifying. Awesome. And then Tama, hopefully I'm saying that right.
It's Tama, like mama, like
Tama.
Bahamas, like melodrama.
Yes, Tama. Gotcha.
I'm coming to you from a cabin in upstate New York, and in 10 seconds or less, my father got me started on archaeology. My undergrad degree is in anthropology with archaeology. And then yada, yada, yada. I have 100 books on the Titanic, and here I am.
Very cool. Yes. Hey, we share that. I have my undergraduate in anthropology too, but then I went into social work, which, as a leeway, that's actually one of the reasons I actually did really enjoy the book too, because Victoria, mentions the fact that it is sometimes difficult to, talk about death. And I think that was a great way to kind of, open up some discussion in that sense, even, it was something that people are interested in. So, yes. Did I miss anybody? I think I got everybody. I'm just making sure. Oh, Steve Hall just joined. It looks like he's connecting. So I'm going to start with one question, and then let's just plan to, let everybody kind of chime in. But basic question. I just want Victoria, if you could just, just introduce yourself and just explain a little bit more about, how you got into this topic, and just, how you went about kind of studying this. Just kind of some background information for us.
Yeah, of course. So if you don't know me, my name is Victoria. I wrote The Death Ship, the book that we're talking about here today. I'm actually from Northern Ireland. I live about 20 miles away from where the ship was built. And it was something that I grew up with from such a young age. I live in a seaside village, so I was always really drawn to ships and just the idea of having that big expansive ocean out there and all those possibilities, but also the danger. Both of those two like conflicting things always really appealed to me. And I think, like someone previously was saying, the irony of this massive ship being on its maiden voyage and sinking on its first trip, like that immediately drew me in because it was such a interesting idea to me as a child. In terms of the book itself, I never actually intended to write a book on Titanic. This came out of nowhere and I just couldn't get the idea out of my head. I went to a talk by Mark Kernside, who I'm sure you guys know from his own books. And he really reignited this passion that I kind of let dwindle a little bit. And I started thinking from, like, again, like someone else was saying, the point of view of the sinking isn't the end of the story. There's so much more that comes after that. And I wanted to kind of explore that side of it. And when I was trying to figure out an angle to kind of approach it with, this idea of grief and talking about death was something that was very important to me. I had lost my uncle in tragic circumstances a couple of years previously, and part of the way that I grieved was learning about death, and that really helped me personally get through that hard period. So I started wondering, how was it for people who lost people on the ship? What happened to the bodies? Where did they go? Like they didn't just disappear. So that was kind of the driving force behind the book, was to find out what happened to these people, who took care of them, and what their continuing story means for even the wreck today.
That's awesome. Yes. That's very awesome. Now I have more questions, but I'm going to open up and see, even if you want to put it into chat, if people aren't too prone to get on video. So I'm just going to open it up. Does anybody want to ask a question to Victoria?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
How did you begin the research process into this topic? Like, where did you begin to, what kind of sources did you begin to look through and researching?
At the very, very start, I utilised a library in Belfast called the Linen Hall Library. It's a 300-year-old library set in the city centre. It has a massive collection of Titanic books. So how I started was reading a bit more generally about the ship, just to re-familiarise myself with the content and what was out there in terms of who talked about what. And then from there, I reached out to the likes of Dee Meister, who was so helpful. I know she's on the call today and I'm sure she's smiling. I reached out to several other Titanic experts who were very willing to help me. And a big thing I actually utilized was online archives, where you could get like free newspapers and stuff from the period when the ship sank. So that was a really interesting way to kind of see how people at the time reacted to the ship sinking and how people reacted to what was being done with the bodies, because you can make an educated guess on what people were thinking, but having those newspapers there was really helpful to really understand how people were thinking about it at the time. Hopefully that answered that question, Lauren.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with all of everything you just said, especially the newspapers. Like, I know that we can't, say like all of these newspapers are like 100% accurate, of course, which of course, but they're so interesting though, just like, and I think that's a big thing if you're looking for exact factual information, and that's great. Like, we want to do that, and that's a big mission of our club, is like, definitely factual information. But I think there's a human interest too that a lot of us have, where it's like, what were people's actual perception, whether it's 100% factual or not. It's like, just how did they actually perceive it? And it's interesting how to think about how like different things might have impacted their perception of it, like hearing other people's testimony or like, kind of witness statements or just different, things. Or even I think like for a lot of the men, the influence of like, in their survivor testimonies, like wanting to present as if they tried to let women get off and not show like any sense of cowardice that was, so like, the expectation was back at that time for sure. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. So would you, just to go off of that question, because I do think there's a lot of people in our club that are interested in even, writing more. Is there any advice you would just give to people that, kind of want to start to take steps in that direction to, be able to kind of open themselves up to that, would you say?
See, as a writer, I always find it a little difficult to give advice because everyone's
Yes.
writing journey is so unique to them and their own circumstances and their own ability.
Yes.
But one thing, especially for nonfiction, one thing I would always advise is read as much as you can about the topic that you're writing about, because you need to understand the kind of language they use, the kind of sources that they've used. For example, when I was writing this book, one of the books that I was relying on quite heavily at the start, I was told was quite inaccurate. So even having that there to understand that not every source, just because it's published, doesn't mean it's true. So partly when it comes to the research side, that is something I definitely recommend. But when you're actually writing, planning is so important because it can be so easy, especially when you're passionate about something, to go off on a tangent. It's so much easier to have a set structure. How I did it, as anyone that's read the book will see, it's split into 3 parts and each part is then split into chapters. That really helped me, especially when it came to kind of differentiating the research itself. I was able to print out, say, the body recovery research and put it in a certain pile. I was able to print out deaf positivity stuff and put it in a pile. So organization is definitely a big part of getting into writing.
Yes. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Great. Anybody else want to ask a question?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead. Sure, go ahead, Jordan.
Victoria, did you have a college login for accessing papers, or like how does that work? Because I end up sending papers to my sibling who's a history PhD student, and sometimes he can get them for me.
See, that's a good idea.
I wrote fanfics.
Some of the ones that I used were just on Internet Archive. That's a very general archive site. Most of the stuff on there is free. And going to the actual newspaper itself. So, for example, the Belfast Telegraph here covered a lot of Titanic. Most of their archives are online for free. And any that I needed a college login for, my partner is actually doing a doctorate, so I was able to sneakily use his logins.
Yeah, I know. That's what me and my brother do is, and I'm gonna have a college login soon. Hopefully. Chaos, but I mean, I have so many writing and publishing questions because I haven't actually read the book, but I'm actually going into writing in community college. You know, I've written fan fiction. I'm trying to publish an original story way too many times. And
yeah, I know how that feels.
yeah, I'll be glad when I do get to read your book when it comes out here. You can't see my room, but I live in an apartment and it's like tiny, and so I have to parse out which books can fit and which can't.
I have the same problem. Like that bookcase behind me is falling apart because it's that full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
Yep.
Great
Not good.
question.
Yes, thank you, Jordan.
Absolutely. And Rebecca asked in the chat, which that's fine. You know, I definitely understand not everybody likes to be on video, and I totally get that. But she said, like, how long did it take to write the book?
Probably about 2 years overall, but that's also including a lot of the research. So I think I started at the end of 2022, and the book kind of went on hold for a while. Because in March 2023, I had left a horrible 10-year relationship, so I had a lot of personal stuff going on. So the book kind of got put on the back burner, but once I'd kind of settled into my new house, I was able just to write and write and write because I had the piece to write. So I think overall it was about 2 years, and that's including the research, the first draft, and I think it was 5 drafts in the end once I was in contact with a publisher just to make sure it was refined and fact checked and stuff. So yeah, I think about 2 years.
Awesome, yes. And I just wanted to say very quick hello to Steve and Terry because they came in like kind of after we did the introduction. So just to say hello to you both. I think I'm going off of memory. Wait, I don't have to go off of memory because the book is right here. Yes. Okay. Always like make sure because you know how like you think you're remembering something and then you're like, wait, let me double check. But Steve wrote the foreword for it, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So glad to see you here for sure. Awesome. And then, you know, I'll just ask you a general question. Like, was there anything with, you know, just the identification process in terms of, I think something that's interesting about it with like class, you know, differences. Like, is there anything that stood out to you in researching in that part of just how, you know, things were different based on, you know, like what class a passenger might have been in? Any surprises in that sense?
One thing that did stand out was because obviously when they were doing the identification process, they were able to use whatever was on that person at the time. So they sometimes were able to get an exact name based on if it was written on a label or if they had identifying things like a wallet or a cigarette case. But when it came to trying to identify people who didn't have such distinguishing marks, one way that they kind of differentiated between the first, second class and the third class was whether or not they had a tattoo, because that was considered to be a lower class thing. It was very rare for someone in the upper class to have tattoos, but I didn't know that before going into the book. So that was something that really stood out to me because I have tattoos myself. So I kind of thought, based on my own working class background, if I had have been on that ship, my tattoos would have meant that was me.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is interesting. Yes. It's interesting to think like how common were tattoos at that point versus today too. You know what I mean? Like cuz I know like it's I'm sure a little bit different in that, but then I would see things when I've read about passengers, especially like crew members, it seemed like a lot of them I read would have certain tattoos. So was it pretty like for third class passengers, was it pretty common or no?
I don't know if it was common, but it would have been one of the key ways that they were able to tell the difference between a first class and a third class. First class people wouldn't have been as likely to have them. It was more of especially for third class people who were coming from seaside towns like Southampton or Belfast, it was very common for people who lived by the sea to have tattoos because a lot of them worked on the docks, and that was just a common thing that people like that did.
Right. That's what I used to kind of like read over passenger biographies a lot just to kind of get to know, you know, different stories. And I remember with a lot of the sailors that would be the case. You know what I mean? So yeah, that is really interesting. See, and something that in a lot of other topics, because me and Dee were kind of talking about this before you came in, it's like that's why it is really interesting to go on a specific topic because then you learn things that you don't necessarily learn kind of just in the mainstream story. But I think it's like I was saying to her, I think it's great that very, talented authors and experts have talked about the bulk of the story. But I think it's really good to have different perspectives with just different specific focuses. And I think that's the way, kind of the Titanic literature is headed right now, which is awesome. So awesome. And then, okay, so I have a question from Paul. Besides the very treatment of bodies dependent on social status, did you discover any other difference with attitudes towards death in 1912 than today? That's a great question.
That's a very good question. I think I've noticed, even just from reading any other history books or historical fiction, people used to be a lot more comfortable talking about death because they were seeing it constantly, and this idea of like a funeral industry wasn't really a thing for a long time. Anytime someone died, they would have been taken care of in the home, so people were a lot more comfortable talking about it, whereas today we're very separated from it. Like as soon as someone passes away, the undertakers come in and take the body away, so there's such a surreal sense of separateness, and I think that contributes to our uncomfortableness around talking about it. So yeah, for me, that was something that really struck me, was just how, because the Titanic was only, it was just over 100 years ago, how different our relationship with death has changed in such a relatively short time.
Yes, I would agree with you on that, definitely. And it is interesting how that, in reading the book, how that played out with the type of death that occurred here, and how so many people didn't have that chance to mourn, their actual loved one because of, the way that things happen. So I definitely agree with you on that. So yes. And then, very good question. And then Rebecca said, does it feel scary to write a book? I can see where she's coming from here, about the Titanic when there has been so many already.
Yes, that was very, very scary.
Yes.
Because there's the Titanic, as I'm sure you all know, no matter how many books you read, you always discover something new with each book. So I was absolutely terrified going into a subject that it's so established already, and there's so many experts out there who know this story, they know the ship inside out, and I was coming in as an enthusiast, yes, but in terms of academics, a complete novice. So it was very, very intimidating. And whenever you are in the process of proposing a non-fiction book to your publisher, you have to justify why it's worth their time to publish your book. So you really have to think, in a topic that is so well covered already, what is my book going to add? So that was very, very scary.
Yes. But I think it really did. And I think you can see by, how many people are interested here today, that it's brought up things that I think, haven't really been covered as much for people. So I think that's awesome for sure, so awesome. And then, oh yeah, so Tama, hope I'm saying it right now. She said, I think I am. I'm, like I said, I'm terrible with pronunciation with things. I'm trying to get better. But she said, how was information / updates regarding loved ones relayed to next of kin? I think that is an interesting question too, for sure. It seemed like there was a little gap, in a sense, a little bit. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there was definitely a gap because it did take so long for them to positively identify the people that were taken back onto land at Halifax. As far as I'm aware, most of the communications was done via telegram or letters, but even then, that would have taken a long time, and grieving loved ones might have had to wait months before even getting the confirmation. And I know for some families, they probably had suspicions that their loved one had died, but because maybe the people going through the undertaking process just didn't have contact details for them, they never found out for sure. And it's things like that were heartbreaking to me, because a big part of being able to grieve is seeing your loved one's body and saying goodbye to them that way, and a lot of people didn't have that.
Yes. Yes, I would agree with you on that one. I've done some just more for like just personal hobby, I guess you could say, like going back to the newspapers, just a lot of just research for especially like third class passengers and like their families and how that information was, provided. And it just seems so often that like they just kind of didn't know and they really had to push for that information. And it was like eventually they would finally say, okay, like just as an example, there's a guy here in Cincinnati that I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I really got interested in his story, and he was never found. And like his family was just like, okay, do we have a funeral? Do we not have a funeral? Like, and they just were holding on to hope. And then they finally were like, you know what? We're just going to have it because it doesn't seem like, but they never really got any sort of official confirmation. It was just kind of like, you know, figuring out that there was no confirmation finally led them to say, okay, it's time to just go ahead and do this. But he does have a cenotaph, and it's really, really nice, and it's in the city. So, at least they were able to do something to honor him in that sense. So, but yeah, absolutely can see where you're coming from there, because it would be very odd to grieve without having an actual body there in that sense. So, another thing I'll tell you guys, this is just me like kind of commenting on this, but I read George Behe's book about Archibald Butt, the first class passenger, and he seemed to kind of know ahead of time that he was gonna have a cenotaph, because he said, I'm gonna get a grave, like, or a headstone made, and he said there's a chance that, maybe my body won't be here, but at least there's something here so my family doesn't have to take care of it. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting that he said that before the accident, because his body hadn't been found either. So just a tidbit, just but yes. And then Thomas said, missing person trauma is so raw for loved ones of missing persons today. That's so true. And then back then being magnified by the lack of technology and communications. So yes. And then Jill had said, how did you get connected with Steve? I would like to ask Steve and add to that Dee too, because she's here as well, and I know she's very knowledgeable. And if anyone has questions for either of them too, because I know they have a lot of expertise in different areas too. So
as far as I'm aware, it was actually the publisher of the book, the History Press, that reached out to Steve. And
okay, yes,
Steve, if you can hear me, I'm very, very grateful for your very kind introduction. That is one thing I will say about the Titanic community. They're very keen to bring in anybody at any level. There's no silly questions. It's just everyone wants to help each other, and I was so grateful for that, because I'm 29. I've never written a book before. They could have easily turned around and said, I'm not doing that. But people in this community don't do that. They want to teach each other and help each other. And I'm just very, very grateful for the likes of Steve and Dee and just anyone that was involved.
Very awesome. Yes. Steve, did you want to introduce yourself?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Yeah, I think, after dinner today, I had a hot bath, which always puts me to sleep. And then I went upstairs and fell asleep. And I woke up at 12:30 in the morning.
Yes.
And I come downstairs, and now it's 1:30 a.m. in the morning. So
yes.
So I just was looking on Facebook, and I just thought, oh, okay, then I remember that. And so I'll run around and get the camera and all that type of stuff, whatever. So, but I was happy to read through the book, when I don't necessarily recall that, Amy, I'm not too sure. I can't recall really. I think I just said to Amy, because I saw the book or something, and I said, oh, well, that's good. I said, is anyone, doing a foreword or something for it, and she said, whatever. I said, well, look, I don't have a problem. I'll do it, It's
Yes.
just to help other people out, you know. What I got on my lap is a hot water bottle.
Oh wow. Yes.
So it's a hot water bottle. It's the middle of winter here in Australia. So let me sit up properly. And excuse me for sounding the way I do, but it is 1:30 in the morning. And
Oh no, yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
1:30, and I was just being rather naughty because when I come downstairs, I thought I'll just have a nice whiskey or something like that, you know, and just tune in. So, but
Yes.
I really enjoyed, you know, reading through the book, you know, and it was just a topic that intrigued me. There's been a lot of people over the years, and they're just sort of wondering, you know, in regards to, you know, all the bodies and that, and you know where they all end up going. And you know, Paul Lee, I mean, Dr. Paul Lee, I mean, he sort of done an article or something like that, or spoke about where the bodies went, how long they would last floating in the water, how many would have gone down, you know, with the ship. Because from my understanding, even with a lifebelt on, I mean, once you got drawn down so far, you wouldn't come back up again, you know. So
Yeah, those were like, no, like even my whatever they were called, seal floaties that I had for years to swim until I was like 8 or 9. My understanding was that they were put on the people so they would feel safe, not that they actually were safe. And I have a question.
Wait, let's hold on a
the
second.
musical,
Gordon, let's Steve continue because he was speaking, but we'll come back to that. Just give me a second here, okay?
sorry,
No, you're
sorry.
fine.
I'm used to having a hand raise thing on Google.
Right. I think there is one on here too, but we'll definitely come back to it. So yes, go ahead, Steve.
I'm just having a jelly bean.
Yes. Yes.
Always like jelly beans, you know.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
you know, I don't think I ever particularly had a great interest in, you know, what happened with with the bodies and things, because, you know, me and Bruce were more concentrating on the ship and things like that, you know. But, you know, for people's opportunity in third class to, you know, to get off the ship. What I love about the Irish is the way they say certain words, you know, sort of like Titanic, because I've got Irish in me too. So, but I don't sound Irish. I sound typical Australian, to be honest, with sinus. But you know, when you look at all the people, you know, and they were trying to get into the lifeboats, third class didn't have much of a go at it. But I think all the males were at the front of the ship, weren't they, in third class? And the female women, they were at the stern. And I think that the married couples, I think, you know, they were down there too. And there must have been a time when they realised that the ship was sinking, you know. I mean, it starts, you know, starts letting over and going, you know, I know what I'd be thinking, because, I mean, you know, if I was there for my wife, I'd be thinking, well, how am I going to get her up there? So, but no, Paul done a good thing on you know, where the bodies and how they dispersed and that, and how long they would have lasted in the water. And you know, in some cases it could have been up to 2 months or 3 months, because the lifebelts would just simply you know, deteriorate. You know, where they all ended up, I don't know. The other fascinating thing, you know, that a lot of people, you know, think is, you know, what happened to the lifeboats. Because I'm just touching on the other side of, you know, on the book, what happened to the, you know, the lifeboats, and where did they end up, and something like that, you know. But when I look at all the books I've got, you know, and I've got a lot of books, you know, and you know, people send me books, and do I read them? Well, perhaps not necessarily. But I remember with
Yes.
and then trying to work out, what happened if you were down in the bottom of the ship, when it's sinking. So I think, she's done a really good job, because no one was there. So anyway,
Yeah.
so I'm sorry I sound like this. As I said, it's coming up to 1:45 in the morning. I know that I said on the Facebook page, remind me and I'll drop in, but it's just serendipitous that I happen to be here. So,
Oh no,
but
you sound great, and thank you for joining us.
no, it's
Yeah,
fine.
thank you.
Look, but I think, it's, today there's, so many Titanic books that you think to yourself, what's going to make me pick the book up? And that's something to me. I'm not being a person who's really interested in in the passengers and the crew. I mean, I was just drawn in the death ship. I thought I love the sounds of that. That sounds
Yes.
really good to me, and
Yes.
I went through all of it. But I think when I wrote out the foreword for the book, and I'd read through the book, and in the foreword, I didn't want to give away too much about what's in the book. I just wanted to draw them in, and I think at the end of it, I think I finished it off by saying simply that the Titanic itself was a victim, we all think about everyone who, lost their life, that night. But I think what's interesting is also for a lot of people, then the connection to the ship. The ship itself was a victim of circumstances too, and that's gone. But I think it'd be interesting to. I've asked a few people questions, over the years, about with in regards to the sending radio messages out from the Marconi device. And I've asked so many people, I said, if somebody's in third class and they wanted to send out a Marconigram, did they ever do it? I could never get an answer to that, actually. I mean, maybe third class probably didn't have too much money anyway, and there's not much, really to say. But one of the other things that I was interested in, and I think, Victoria might know more about it than I do, is that Alagul 11 or 12. I find that's really interesting, And when it comes to Belfast, I've never been to Belfast. I mean, I'd like to go there. I'd like to go down in the dry dock or something like that, But it's just so far from here, that, I'd have to be really motivated to really want to go there. So, but anyway, look, this show's about Victoria. It's not about me. It's just, it's just my own personal opinions on the book. I think it's really well written, and I was happy to do the foreword for it. And I wish you the best of luck with it, I mean, I'll hang around probably for another half an hour, and I'll be politically incorrect and go out and have a cigarette because that's my generation. Yeah, well, I can't help it. Well, I can't help it, because when I was growing up, everyone's smoking cigarettes, and I've never been, I never liked beer, but being typical, perhaps the Irish in me, I like to have a whiskey,
Yes.
and I think I can be excused because it's 1:50 a.m. in the morning. So, look, I'll hang in probably.
Yes.
I don't know how much longer you guys are going to talk, but I'll just hang in because look, it's Victoria. I mean, so let's listen to what she's got to say.
Awesome.
Thanks
Well,
everyone
thank
for
you
listening
so
in.
much.
Okay.
That was a great question too. I'm gonna have to do my own research into that about the the third class and being able to send the telegram. That is a great question. Yes.
Oh.
So yeah. Awesome. Thank you again for joining for sure, especially at this time, where you're at. So
No, that's fine, because there's not much happening here really at 2:00 in the morning. And
Right.
it's a bit cold. So I've got my water bottle. So I'm going to put my feet up again. No, actually, I'm going to go out and.
Okay.
I'll be back in
No
a couple of
problem.
minutes. Good luck, Victoria, with the book, mate. And I was very happy to help you out, mate.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's all right, mate.
Okay, I'm gonna just go to the next question I see in the chat. And Jordan, we are gonna get to your question. Just give me just a little bit here because I'm just kind of going in order. But
I'll put it in chat, I guess.
yeah, that's totally fine. I'm just kind of going in order here. Paul said, "Are we ever likely to identify the unknown victims buried in Halifax?" And that could be Victoria. You can definitely, of course, answer. And then I don't know if Dee might have some knowledge being in that area and just, so yeah. But what would you say about this one, Victoria?
To be honest, Dee might be more suited to answering this question, but as far as I'm aware, there is a project. I don't know if it's still ongoing or not, but there was a project called Name Them All. But there's some ethical issues with that because you would have to reopen the graves and you'd have to analyze bones and dental records. So ethically, I think there's a bit of a contention around it, but we probably could figure out who's buried where a bit more accurately now. It's just whether or not people are okay with disturbing the grave or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. Dee, did you have any insight on that question at all?
Yes, and just to second what Victoria had said, there certainly is a lot of regarding that. There was a project that was introduced, and basically the feelings of the several levels of government, the entities that manage the graveyards. There will be a lot of issue with trying to identify those unidentified via DNA, because there would need to be, some people with regards to the graves. There would have to be, excavations and things like that, and that is something that is not certainly doesn't sit well. But there are other ways, certainly. There are probably other ways to hopefully determine eventually the identities with information that we have genealogically, information that does exist. It's just a matter of having the time to be able to sort through all of that and try to see if we can gather more information per individual. There are some of the unidentified buried in Halifax that are in different stages of identification. So I can't say any more than that, but I can say that. But yeah, that has been a big concern because of what would be entailed with having to disturb the graves, right? And those are sacred lands. And of course, with the Jewish cemetery, Baron de Hirsch, that is not even possible to be able to. So we've gotten a lot of, we've heard things from both sides, with regards to family, descendants, and things wanting to know more, etc. And I wanted to speak to that too, but you had asked earlier how I learned about Victoria. So Victoria did a talk. She did a presentation for the Belfast Titanic Society a while back, and it was very well done, very interesting, very intriguing. And Aidan McMichael, chairman of the Belfast Titanic Society, who invited her to speak, he had contacted me and said, "Do you really should, touch base with Victoria?" And he said the same thing to Victoria, that you should touch base with each other, and we did, and that's kind of how we got to know each other. So I helped with fact checking, helped with providing her with information from here, and I do that quite often because, again, our role, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and even Atlantic Canada, with the embalmers and the funeral staff who were called to come to Halifax by John Snow to assist with the task of preparing the bodies for repatriation or burial. It was something that we have a lot of background in that here. So I was honored to be able to work with Victoria, and it was a pleasure as well. So I was going to answer something else. I can't remember what it was. I'm already off track of it. I was talking about Project Name Them All, and I said I would mention something else, and I already don't remember what it is. Anyway, so I just it's been a pleasure to work with her. And again, it's a more specific topic, and we're finding that after all the books that have been written by, written about Titanic, what is it, second in the number of books that have written or printed to be other after the Bible. But we're hearing more and more people interested in writing on specific issues or specific characteristics. So it was a pleasure to be able to see this new work. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I remember, I'll come back on and say, do you remember what I was
Yes.
what I said, Victoria? I don't remember. Anyway, but no, as more information becomes available, I think, oh yes, that was what I was going to say. We've had, over the many years, there are Titanic tour guides in Halifax. There are a lot of Titanic historians, authors, and many of them actually are members of the Titanic Society of Atlantic Canada, so I've got to know them quite well. So over the years, we've had people come to Halifax to visit to confirm that indeed a family member is buried there, because for years and years they were told that their loved one was buried at sea, was never found, and yet here they are buried in Mount Olivet Cemetery, Catholic Cemetery, Fairview Lawn, right? And interestingly enough, it's just been in more recent years that in the last couple of years, there were family members that came to visit a grave site in a grave in Barrenderhurst Cemetery, because the gentleman isn't Jewish, he was Church of England, and that was Frederick Wormald. But in the 1990s, Michel Navratil's son came to visit, because at first they were not aware that he was buried in Halifax. And I mean, look at how well known Michel Navratil and his story is.
Yes.
So it's quite fascinating for us still. We will get a call that so-and-so has come to visit, and they're confirming, oh my, and they, for many, many years, did not know that their family member, not only was it, but they found, but buried in Halifax.
That's interesting. Yes. Very interesting. I think it speaks to like the communication gaps that must have occurred too, for sure. So thank you, Dee. That's great information.
Yeah, I think sometimes it was misspelling of names, or
yes,
the inaccurate information that keeps getting passed down, carried down. So, and kudos to those families who really did the research and kept working at it. One example is Angelica Harris, who wrote her book on her great uncles and uncles-in-law, right? Because for years they were going with the names were misspelled, so she kept hearing, "No, it's not them, it's not them," and it took her, almost 40 years of research, then coming to Halifax to come to the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, because that's where it was proven that yes, it was indeed them. So, and I worked on the project with Angelica, so I got to see how emotional a time that is for these families. We're talking 40 years, right?
Yes.
So, and because of misspelling or because of misinformation. We all know today there's so much misinformation and disinformation you constantly have to churn through. Well, they were doing that many years ago too, when it came to
exactly. Yes. And the spelling thing is interesting too, because I've seen that just in the very limited research I've started doing, that you have different, you can even find different accounts that maybe haven't been seen because the spelling is different. Then you're like, oh, there is more information about this person, but they had their name spelled different, so that's so true. Yes,
it is.
Well, awesome.
Yes, there's actually one grave in Mount Olivet Cemetery, and I think there's 3 names for this gentleman, but he is actually a first-class passenger. But he actually had 5 names, and when you look at his listing of his name, this is also spelled other different ways too. And the same with when you think of Helene Jabor, it's also spelled Zabor. So even in the research we have now, if you go on Encyclopedia Titanica, you speak with historians, there's more than one way that the name is spelled or shown, because that's all the different ways it's appeared. And some of the grave markers are not spelled correctly. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So something good, for anybody here too that might be doing research, just to be aware of that. So, well, thank you, Dee. That's great insight for sure. So, and then Lauren asked, and I agree with her on this, because I watched this documentary too, and I think it was really well done. And just a question for Victoria: have you had a chance to watch Tom Linsky's recent documentary on this subject? Do you think it's a good companion to your book?
Yeah, I haven't had the chance to watch it yet, but I'm going to now, because like most days, I'm sure every documentary that comes out, it just gets added to an ever-growing list. So I'm curious.
I
It's
will,
called,
if I can just make a comment on that particular documentary. It took Tom over a year of research, actually more than a year, of researching and gathering bits of information to put in the documentary. And I was with him for a lot of the filming and a lot of the research, because when he comes to visit here, he's from Pennsylvania originally, living in New Jersey, but he has a residence here in Nova Scotia. And it's wonderful to work with him, and it was great to see all those bits of information that we did gather over the years be placed in that documentary. And to me, it's very, very detailed and very accurate. I feel it's he did a very good job on it.
yes, I would. It's called In Titanic's Wake, and I would agree too. I think it's funny because it came out like right after the anniversary, and it really does go along with what you wrote about, Victoria. So I think it's interesting that it all kind of has been released at the same time. So I would suggest that to anybody, that to kind of make connections with some of the things that the Death Ship does talk about, that you can kind of visualize and see, So yeah, and Lorian said, this is just a comment, but she said, back to what I was saying before, that Archie was always about having his affairs in order and recording legacy for history. And since he was traveling all the time, it does make sense that he was prepared. I agree with you. And I think it was like some of his military happenings, like involvement too. He just wanted to definitely be prepared, which is, it does say something to what you were talking about before, is, the difference between 1912 and today, that even some people that were not maybe in the age group where they might think about preparing for death, because of, maybe being more exposed to it through things like shipwrecks and different things, might have, prepared a little bit more than we think to do it. I think he was like, I want to say in his 40s, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going off of memory here, but yeah, absolutely. And yes, and then Michelle said, the mystery book I read was a ghost mystery. Maybe it was just about the original Titanic ship itself, where a grieving mother haunted the shore because her spirit was not at peace, not knowing if her baby had died, survived, or on a different lifeboat. I won't spoil the ending because it's a fictional book. But, oh, I get it. But did you encounter any real life ghost stories in researching specific grievers? I love that. I'm a paranormal fan, so I can't help but love her question.
That is a great question.
Yes, it is.
Nothing in terms of gravers themselves, but one bit I would mention, I think I mentioned it in the introduction, Belfast people are very superstitious, and there's a story that has been passed down generations that a woman, I can't remember if it was a woman in black or a woman in white, whatever one's the bad one, apparently some kind of spectre was seen in and around Harland and Wolff during the building of the ship, which made all of the construction workers very antsy. So supposedly when the ship sank, some of them weren't surprised because they had seen that spectre.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I would suggest for anybody interested in this topic, in addition to what Victoria has written, but George Behe's book about paranormal in the Titanic, because he really just bases it on like accounts, and he actually does a really good job of dividing the accounts into what is like probably speculation, but then ones that he found to be pretty hard to disprove, and it's really interesting. So I think that could be something too that somebody that's interested could expand on, based more on what we have today for information. So that's a great one. So yes, and then Lauren said, can you tell us more about the cover arts for the book? Who designed it, etc.? It's very unique. I agree. I think it's very yeah.
I feel bad now. I can't remember the artist's name. It was the publisher. It was one of their artists in residence. But she had prepared initially 3 different cover proofs for me. One of them had like an angel of death over the ship, which I thought was a bit too on the nose. And then the other one, I can't remember. It was fairly similar, but the cover that we went with in the end is the one that spoke to me the most, because it kind of has that somber, melancholy kind of feel to it. Because I didn't want something dead colorful, because that's not what the book is. But I was very, very happy with the cover art for that, because I've seen, not to be mean to some self-published books, but I've seen some cover art that is not great. So that was a concern when I was doing my own.
Yes, awesome. And then so Jill said, thank you for staying up, Steve. So just and
That's
Marcy,
right. I'm
yeah.
I'm just hanging in, here, and I'm probably now, I should have gone to bed probably half an hour and went back up again. Now I'm just starting to wake up. But, one question that I'd like to just, ask is, the Titanic movies. Was there any particular book, any particular movie you watched, that sort of drew you into Titanic?
I mean, just for my generation, I think it was probably the James Cameron one. Because my mum was a massive fan of it, so she had it on TV a lot. But anytime I brought it up to my great aunt and uncle, born and bred Belfast, they would tell me that it was inaccurate.
Yes, you said they would say it was inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
that
it still
is
ties you in, though. Yes, I agree with you. I don't know your exact age, and I won't ask that on here, but I'm assuming we're kind of in the same age group. And yeah, it's like definitely the one at some level, I think, that tied a lot of, or like drew a lot of us in that sense, for sure. So yes, but it sounds like from reading your book, you had a lot of things that you saw or went to visit at exhibits that really drew you into. You know what I mean? So it wasn't just like a movie, which is kind of unique for our age group, because I think a lot of us did get drawn in by the movie just by itself. So yes, and then kind of similar to what I asked before, but I will definitely ask it because maybe it can tie into what was just asked too. But Mert just said, how did you specifically know that you wanted to write this book, and how did it all just initially start to write the book?
Well, I've kind of previously touched on the idea that so many books had already been written on this topic. How was I meant to differentiate myself between everything else that had been covered? And the one thing that I've always been fascinated by is death. And I know that sounds fairly morbid, but it's something I've always been drawn to. And especially when it comes to Titanic, if the ship hadn't have sank, it would have been just another White Star Line ship. The reason the ship is so famous is because of the tragic nature and because of the sheer amount of death that was experienced on the ship. So that really kind of drew me in, and I felt like it was a good blueprint for getting a conversation about death started. There was actually a question in the chat there asking about Caitlin Doughty. She is a US mortician who was a massive influence on this book. She also is writing a book about the same topic.
Oh, wow.
Weird. There's a weird synergy thing there.
Yeah.
So I think it was literally the week that I got my book proposal sent to the publisher, she announced on her Instagram that she was also writing one. Wow. And that was just so bizarre to me, because I mentioned her in the book about being such a big influence on my own kind of relationship with death. So it's really cool that we're kind of overlapping a little bit.
Yes.
I don't think she knows who I am, but that's fine. I know who she is.
Right. Say her name one more time for me.
Caitlin Doughty.
Okay.
She's on YouTube as Ask a Mortician.
Yes. You know what is funny that you say that? Somebody on our book club group mentioned that book, and I was thinking, is this the same book that they mentioned? But with what you just said, I think that was the book that they were talking about. So there is a similar book coming out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Book?
If I could just comment on there.
Yes,
Caitlin is indeed writing a book, and Victoria's writing. She mentioned her in the book, and I have gotten to meet and work a little bit with Caitlin. She was in Halifax doing some research on her book and for her book, and Yeah, but I definitely did mention, as I told Victoria, I mentioned Victoria to her, and because it's so interesting how, they're both, there's an overlap there, they're both writing on a similar subject, but which I think is great, where it's obviously the right time for this information, I think, to be coming to being shared and coming to light for us. But yes, she's still working on her book, and yes, certainly I would recommend checking out her videos, her little clips on YouTube. Yeah, she's
Awesome.
quite interesting. Yes.
Very cool. Yes. So I'm glad you clarified that, because it is interesting that, both books and a, documentary have come out. That is neat how, so, and that just shows that I think one thing, as somebody like interested in writing about Titanic, you might ask yourself, like, what if somebody comes out with something exactly what I'm thinking of? But it just shows that people can approach things differently and still write books about these specific things. So yeah, awesome. And then Tama said, just curious if you would consider autograph book plates for purchase in the store for us to make the book more special than it already is.
All of that. It's something I can definitely look into. Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be nice.
Gotcha. And Maverick said, I had a question, forgot what I was going to ask. Well, I know. I get that part. It's like it's there and then it's gone. But if you think of it, Maverick, you just definitely let us know in here. So, and then Tamna said, regarding respect for the dead, I struggle with satiric depictions. Thumbtamic. I'm not sure what that is. I'm kind of merchandising needs to be respectful for the dead, and I agree with this. I even like memes that are kind of like, joking. I agree with that. What is Thumbtamic? I've never heard of that before.
So Thumbtanic is a production, a small production. It shows up on YouTube if you look. And the person who did it actually paints thumbs and does the entire Titanic event from the standpoint of people represented by thumbs. And the name of the movie is actually Thumbtanic.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
That is very bizarre.
Yes, and I agree. I think it's the time that has passed. And Victoria, I'll let you comment on this. Like, I guess it's like the time that has passed. I feel like people become, because you think about something like, for example, September 11th here, and like I don't think people would maybe kind of make these kind of
weird
themes or things that they do for Titanic. So that is interesting to think about how it's like things can change over time. I remember even seeing something about a video with a slide that people were on that was supposed to be and I was just like, the Titanic, and it was just very weird. So do you have any comment on that, Victoria?
When I went to the exhibit here in Chicago, they had a gift shop, and I was walking through it, and I can understand having the little crewman bear or like crewman bear for kids, but everything else I was just like, I can't bear for people to walk into my living space and say I have like I mean, it was very kitschy, and my sister who came to get me agreed, and we had a conversation about, is it respectful? And one of my first posts on the group was about that.
Yes,
Like the
agreed.
Auschwitz Museum has a bookstore. They just have a bookstore, which would be great for Titanic exhibit.
Yep, agreed. It is definitely just, you want to be respectful, and I think the book definitely does justice in that sense, for sure, to actually respect the things that people went through in the process of death and the aftermath. And yeah, do you have any comment on that, Victoria?
You know, it's interesting with Jordan saying about the idea of all the kitschy, tacky kind of stuff.
Yes.
The Titanic Museum in Belfast, at the very, very end of the museum, they actually have a room that has all these bizarre merchandise that kind of came out after the film. So there was like Titanic soap and dolls and just all this really, there was a Titanic train, I remember standing out, just stuff that they knew people would buy, but even just standing there looking at it, because when you come out of the room that you come out of and then go into that room, you're seeing the violin from the wreck and one of the life belts from the Mackie Bennett. So you're coming from this really somber, melancholy room and then going into that. It's very, very jarring. And it does make you wonder, like you were saying about something like 9/11, at what point is that kind of kitschy humor acceptable? Is it ever acceptable?
Right.
No.
I think for like those of us who actually respect the individuals involved, it never is. I agree with you on that. Personally, I've never found that kind of stuff amusing or entertaining. It's like, these are people's lives, even if it was a long time ago, they still had families and people that they mattered to. So yes. And then Jordan asks, were the crew, that's a great question, like, were the crew given life belts? I think
they were.
Yeah.
Because I think there was 3,000 life belts on the ship, but I think just in the chaos of trying to get everybody to the lifeboats in time, trying to make sure that everyone had their own life belts on, I think a lot of them ended up just not having the time to put one on.
Yes, because I remember the story with Thomas Andrews giving, I can't remember what her name was off the top of my head.
Wasn't Violet Jessup?
Yes, I
Yeah.
remember it was like, I think that's who it was, but he had said, like, put this on so that other people
to set an example for other. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, and then Paul said he had to leave, but he did say also that fascinating subject and book, and please keep these at an easier time for those outside the US. And I will definitely do that. I'm very glad that we can make this work. So
to be fair to yourself, Charlotte, it is difficult to get a time that suits everyone.
Yes. So we will definitely keep trying, and I want us to do more of these. Are you now, Victoria? Are you actually, as I said before, I've taken a hiatus from Facebook for reasons I won't go into because I'll be politically correct at this time. But are you in our group, like, to get information from us, or at least on the newsletter?
I definitely follow you guys on Instagram. I don't know
Okay,
about the
that's
newsletter,
perfect.
but I'm the same. We use Facebook. I've kind of taken a step away from it.
Yes. So but I'll definitely, send you things if we do these again too. So if you're
Yes,
able
please do.
to,
I'd love to get more involved.
yeah, absolutely. So great question though. And then hold on one second. I have to get back to where I was because I kind of lost track. Hold on one second. Don't you love when that happens where you're like, you have it and then the Zoom just kind of gets all the way to the top and then you kind of have to get back to it. So yes.
Wait till you get to nearly 70 years of age. I mean, you can't even find where the car keys are,
Right. Well, I do that sometimes.
It's pretty bad, but just while we're talking, it'd be curious because I was just asked Victoria, I mean, have you ever gone down to or gone into Belfast or near where the shipyard is there on any of the type of anniversaries? Like when Titanic left for the last time on, April, the 2nd. Have you ever gone down to the dry dock and stood there and say, oh, it was here on the 14th of February, 6th of February, I can't remember, or imagine the ship leaving, on April the 2nd. Have you ever done something like that?
I have, just because it's so easy for me to get up there, but
yeah.
I do know that the Titanic Museum holds like a special event every year for the anniversary of the sinking, but they normally do it around the time that the ship hit the iceberg, so I can't be up there that late at night because I can't get home.
No, that's okay. Another question, that I think, I'd like to ask. I mean, you've been, into where Belfast Lock,
Mhm.
And you see the water there. This is a silly question. What color is it? Is it a blue or a green? What color is the water?
It's like because we don't get a lot of sun. A lot of the time it's a bluey gray.
I'm just curious because, if you look at it, I mean, from 1912 and today, the color of the water's got to be much the same. When you look at the lock and you look at the water and you say to yourself, that looks blue, looks green, looks muddy. I don't know. I think that's always interesting to me because I've said to a lot of guys who've been out on expeditions, and I've said at the time where Titanic sank, and you look over the side of the ship, what colour's the water? I mean, is it a dark blue, light blue? Is it green? It's hard for me to imagine, but if I was over there, the biggest thing I'd like to do is go down in the dry dock, and I'd like to just go down there because I mean, it's the books and bits and pieces that we've done or something like that, But that's just curious to me. Next time you go down there, Victoria, I know they call you Victoria or they call you Vicky. I don't know. But,
Victoria, please.
Yes, Victoria. That's fine. Yeah, and next time you go down there, just have a look and just around that time of the year, the same time, just have a look at what colour the water is. To try and imagine, you can imagine the ship, but it's got to be sitting in the same water, and the water's got to be the same colour. You know what I mean? And it was either green, blue, or muddy brown, and I'd be curious to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm definitely doing that.
Thank you.
Very cool. Yes, it's a great question too, or just thought like, what did it? Yes, awesome. And then Scott said, "I am amazed that no one before treated the subject in depth in a nonfiction book. Thank you for doing so. I look forward to reading it when it becomes available." And he did mention the death acceptance advocate, Caitlin Doughty. Is that how you say it?
Doty. It's like a pizza dough. Doty.
Yes, who is Ask a Mortician on YouTube and the author of Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? That's a good one. Announced last year.
That's a great book. It's questions that kids ask about death, and it's her like very candidly explaining in a kid-friendly way how to answer those questions.
Very cool. So awesome. And he just kind of asked, like, had you been in touch with her?
No.
Okay, got you. So interesting though, like just how it does overlap, Somebody did ask, Craig said, in the event that we do have questions for the author after Zoom, do you have like a preferred way to contact, whether that be like your social media or just any specific way that you prefer contact, would you say?
Just my Instagram.
Yeah.
I think someone's already found the link there. Yes, Jill has the link there in the chat, so that's handy.
Awesome. And then Jill said, has anyone here been to a death cafe? The whole focus is talking about death, and they have a website, and there's live meetings. That is very, because it is, I used to work at a nursing home for about 20 years, and it is very difficult. And I think it's the reason why a lot of people don't experience successful, process of death, is because there is such an avoidance of the topic that, yeah. So has anybody here been to a death cafe?
No.
I have not.
I have not been to an official death cafe. I've been to meetings that are very similar, but they are becoming much more popular here. And it's interesting when you talk about, the subject of death and it being very taboo for a while. Way back when, as you mentioned, family members were waked in homes, and the communities all got together, and you still see this in traditional villages and towns and places in other places in the world, not so much here. But people were very close knit, and they all experienced this together. Mourning clothes, people wore mourning clothes for weeks, if not months, and jewelry and all those kind of things. You don't see that the same way. You didn't see it for a while, but that's kind of coming back in fashion.
Yes.
And people, there's a push now to have people to talk about death more. And even, at least at this perspective from here, with Jay's Soul Funeral Home, for example, there's more opportunities to be able to share about your loved one or things like that. And they're trying to make it more personable, make it more approachable, I guess. So the death cafes, when I understand here, are becoming quite popular. So I'm intending to attend one, and as I speak about the different jewelry and things like that today, there's a little jewelry with urns that you can put remains in and things like that. That's becoming, you probably know that, becoming more popular. For years you didn't see anything like that. People didn't talk about it.
Yes.
Like that, right? It became this mystery of what happens at funeral homes, and and then you go to the funeral or whatever. And now there's so many different ways that you can do funerals or celebrations of life. Very personal touches are all over the place, which I think personally is fantastic.
Yes, I agree with you.
I'm actually wearing funeral jewelry right now of my parents.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I'm from me. It's not everybody's
Yes.
thing, but for me, it's very important. I'm glad to have that opportunity to be able to do that.
That is awesome. That is, and it's awesome how it ties in with like what you're doing with Titanic too. You know what? So it's very neat. Yes.
Well, I spend a lot of time. I sat down one day and realized I spend a lot of time researching and talking about people who are
Yes.
deceased
Yes.
and their families. And I get asked, "You're president of a Titanic Society. Why would there be a Titanic Society?" The sinking of Titanic was the beginning of the story. I mean, there are so many aspects. There's so many times I get contacted by descendants or people who think that they may be connected. We get people contacting and saying, "I had a family member on Titanic," and we find out it wasn't Titanic, it was Empress of Ireland, which we've
Oh
got
wow.
Canada's Titanic. We get this a lot. I get this.
Yes.
So there's always that. So for me, being able to have a personal connection when my parents passed recently, that means the world to me, because like I said, it's around me all the time, but in a
Yes.
very good way. You can take it negatively or you can take it positive, and I choose to take a positive attitude. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is so yes, that is very neat. So awesome. Well, great discussion and question. And Jill said the website is deathcafe.com. So very cool. And then and she put up Victoria's Instagram, and somebody just mentioned that Heather mentioned that George Behe's book is Titanic: Four Warnings of a Tragedy. And that one, you kind of have to kind of look for it a little bit. I found it on eBay. So yes. And then Lauren.
No. You get it from Lulu if you get it at all, because eBay they charge you like $50 and Lulu is like half that, and as long as you're careful with the address, you can get it from them quite easily. The rest of my books arrived late because I didn't realize that the address apparently didn't have the apartment number.
Oh, okay,
And
yes.
then I emailed them and they were very nice. Like, I had already gotten the refund, so I hope George got like the $99.83, I think it was. And then he released more books, which I'm gonna have to count up to.
Yes, yes. Good to know, yes. And then Lauren said your book must be one of the first books that covers the Titan tragedy, which is still relatively recent. No, sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at that. It was just more she's right. But
Yeah.
that just came out wrong. It wasn't a laugh, it was just more like, yep, that's true. So but what made you decide to incorporate that into your work? Am I right in thinking that you had already started writing the book when that disaster occurred?
Yes, so I was knee deep in writing the book when that was occurring, and when it was happening, my friend and I were both watching anything live that we could get our hands on, and what I found interesting was I kept a little Word document where I documented how people were reacting to the tragedy as it happened, but I did it in a way that kind of covered left-wing media coverage, right-wing media coverage, different countries around the world, just to see if there was a consistent way that people were reacting to it. And a big part of my book in the end is the legacy of the wreck itself, and is it ethically okay to visit the wreck, because some people would argue it's a gravesite. So when that happened, there was a lot of discourse on they shouldn't have went down there anyway because it's a graveyard, and I wanted to kind of explore what that meant to people that are pro graveyard and are anti graveyard. So it was an interesting thing to cover, but I also had to be careful in a legal sense, because I didn't want to necessarily be mean to anyone that was involved in the making of the ship, but also kind of get my own opinion across in a respectful way at the same time.
Right, absolutely. So
and no, what that taught me is that it's unsafe to go down to the wreck unless you're like an oceanographer or something.
Yeah, agreed.
If you're trained to deal with ocean pressures, sure, go ahead, but like the casual, like I would not go down there unless I had a lot of training, you know?
Right, absolutely. And then Heather said, she said that I read Ballard's junior edition of Discovery of the Titanic in 1990. Very nice. And let's see here. I'm gonna go the opposite way just for a second, but I will get to everyone's questions because it made me go up again. Have you been in touch? Okay, hold on one second. This little conversation thing is being kind of silly for me. Hold on one second. I'll get back to it. Okay, there we go. While I'm doing that, here is a great opportunity to let you guys know that we will be doing, and this will be in the newsletter, but we are planning to do our 7th anniversary discussion in August. So I can't remember. I want to say it's like the 3rd August, or 3rd weekend of August, maybe the 23rd, I think. Jill can correct me because I'm going off of memory here, but that will be another chance too for all of us to get together soon to kind of celebrate that and talk about that. So just an FYI while I am locating the next question here. So just so you guys kind of have that on your radar, because I do think it's very nice for us to get together and actually be able, to talk about these things for sure. So awesome. And okay, here we go. And then Lorianne said, I have a question. Was there a specific artifact or item that really struck you while you were writing the book? For example, as silly as it sounds, nothing sounds silly here. I didn't know about the embroidered Titanic napkins that were handed out during a lot of the mourning ceremonies. That's interesting. There's one in Belfast and a few in Southampton, and it really struck me. So is there any artifact that drew or connected you while you were writing the book? That's a great question.
That's a very good question. I'm not sure if it counts as an artifact, but the story that stuck with me the most was Sidney Goodwin, the young child whose body was recovered. And if I'm remembering correctly, the way that they were eventually able to positively identify him was through his shoes. And just the idea of this child's little shoe surviving that long, and just knowing that like his little feet were in there, I think people think Titanic, they think the big massive ship, they think this big tragedy, but those little shoes really remind you that this is a human story at its center. And I think for me, that was the object that really stuck with me.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they identified him through dental records, actually, from what I heard on CBS News. I clicked on the story because I thought it was about, like, the Holocaust, not realizing that there were shoes connected to Titanic as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then
that is correct. And Victoria, yes, the shoes were identified as being Sydney's at approximately the same time or just after the DNA correctly identified the child as Sydney, because the child was identified twice.
Yes.
And then in 2008, it was confirmed that it was Sydney Leslie Goodwin. They were able to gather a piece of his arm bone and also dentin from his teeth. And dentin is what positively identified him. And it was because they were able to identify him with that much information because of a brass plaque that was placed over the baby that said "Our Babe," that was purchased by the crew members of the Mackie Bennett because they were so taken by the child, and they paid for his clothes and his other effects for him, and we're blessed to have that because at the time, 2 other bodies nearby, they were trying to see if they could find anything all around that area, and in the other grave, there was nothing. So it was interesting to have that opportunity. But then the shoes had been hidden in a drawer for over 25 years by a police officer who took the 2 shoes, and family members donated the shoes to the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic in Halifax, and the identification was made then because it was believed first that it could be shoes of a child from the Halifax explosion, but no, they were identified as Sydney's.
Halifax.
Yeah, Sydney's story is a fascinating one here, of course, in Halifax. A lot of people come and leave toys and leave little things for him, anything from stuffed toys to blankets, money, jewelry, all kinds of things. So for years, the cemetery caretakers would collect it, and it almost filled the room. They thought, what are we going to do? So when Titanic Society of Atlantic Canada was formed, and we worked closely with them doing memorials and doing different things there, holding events relating to the commemoration, for example, every year. So we were given permission to collect the items. So I actually, as an archivist as well, we catalog the items. So it's a fascinating study of all the different things that people leave for not just Sydney, but for every child that was lost. So when the family were informed of Sydney's identification, they did not want to alter the monument in any way. So they made a separate plaque that's in front of the monument with Sydney's name on it because they wanted the monument to continue to represent all the children.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Dee, how did you get into your involvement, by the way? I think that's a great question too.
Well, I'll do this quickly. Okay, so I'm from Newfoundland.
Yes.
And we studied Titanic extensively. In Newfoundland, as far as I understand, in many schools still honor the commemoration every year by having Titanic Week. And what we would do is we would do plays or shows and do assignments and things like that, displays and things all week. And it was an education week and it was Titanic Week. So then when I was about 11 years old, I wondered where Titanic would be, like how she would appear, what she'd be like on the ocean floor, North Atlantic Ocean floor in 100 years. And 100 years later, I was president of a Titanic Society in Halifax.
Wow. Yes,
yeah.
that is
so
awesome.
I was always been an interest. So when I moved here in 1989 to Nova Scotia, I realized there's a lot about Titanic, of course, at the museum and things, but a bigger focus would be the Halifax explosion because so many people lost their lives or were injured.
Yes.
And that happened December 6, 1917. A lot of people don't realize this, is that 3 of the biggest tragedies to befall Halifax and area are White Star related. April 1st, 1873, SS Atlantic sinks off of Prospect Bay, 35 minutes from Halifax. 1912, April say 18th to June 12th is the recovery effort chronology for Halifax and the area. Then we have December 6, 1917, the SS Emo collides with the SS Mont Blanc. The Emo was built by White Star as a cattle ship called Runic, and it was sold to a Norwegian company. It survived the Halifax explosion. The large munition ship that had many munitions, that's the Mont Blanc, was obliterated, but the SS Emo survived and then became other names of ships was purchased again and sank as the Gouverneurin off the Falkland Islands. So it's a very interesting story, but our whole tragedy, people come to visit Halifax, the city of tragedies, basically they're white star connected.
Yes. No, that is very interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. I'm really glad you could come today, because that's all this information is really just adding on to what we've been able to read in the book, and it's really interesting for sure. So
Well, I'm hoping
yes, and
Victoria can come and visit someday, and all of you can come.
Oh, I'm hoping and praying.
Me and Bill had actually mentioned that that would be a really neat place one year to have like maybe at the anniversary, or something in that sense of the Titanic. Like, I know we've done things with Queen Mary, but that would really be a neat place too, for
Well,
sure.
keep that in mind, because we're thinking maybe like 2027 is the 115th anniversary. So we're
Oh,
talking about
okay.
doing something here. And just in June, we had a
Yes.
Titanic gathering. There were 53 of us,
Yes.
and 2 people were actually from Australia. We've had people
Oh
from
my
the
gosh.
US,
Oh,
the
wow.
UK, and
What,
Canada,
from
and it was
Australia?
amazing. Yeah,
That is
two from, it
Wow.
was, yeah, we had
Yes.
2 from Australia, and it was great. We had a great time. We did the memorials at 3 of the cemeteries. But
Yes.
of course, toured the museum, toured the churches that were involved, and had talks there.
Oh my gosh.
Spent the
Yes.
afternoon, had Saturday afternoon, the 21st, at George Wright House. George Wright was one of the only 2 passengers in Atlantic Canada to board Titanic. His body was never found, but there's a monument for him in Dartmouth. And he left his mansion. He changed his will the days before he boarded Titanic. He was in London, and because he was a well-known businessman, and he willed his mansion to the local council of women in Halifax, and it's still being used today. I'm a member, so we spent the afternoon speaking, doing presentations, and having events at the mansion, which was wonderful. Then on Sunday morning, we went to SS Atlantic. We went to the Heritage Park, where several of the bodies are buried in a mass grave there, and there's another mass grave not far away. But yeah,
Yes.
we had a wonderful time. So I think if we
Yes.
consider doing something like that, that would be really neat to do that again.
Yes, it would. I like that idea too. 115th anniversary. That would be very neat. So we're gonna remember that. I agree with you on that. So got plenty of time to think it over too. So that would give us time to plan and everything. So I think that's an awesome idea. So, well, neat. And then Tama said, how many assisted with processing the remains of loved ones who were not undertaker qualified? If you're familiar with that.
Off the top of my head, basically Jon Snow kind of had a band of undertakers behind him come in to assist him. Most people that were taking part in the undertaking activities had to be qualified, because it involved embalming and a bunch of other stuff that the general layman couldn't have done.
Oh
Is that
yes,
correct?
basically, yeah. Jon Snow released a letter to the embalmers, to the funeral directors across Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and some came from PEI. Yes, they absolutely had to be qualified. The interesting thing is the paperwork said that they needed the men who would be focused, and kind of who would be able to take on this task. But there was a female embalmer. She embalmed the women and children. Jon assigned her specifically, Mary Walsh, and which is interesting. But no, they had to be very qualified, and they had to bring their own materials. So there is a, how do I say this? There's a folding portable wooden table, an embalming table, that still exists in a museum in Lower Selma, Nova Scotia, that John Jacob Astor was embalmed on. I've held it, carried it, measured it.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
I didn't know that.
It's absolutely, absolutely amazing. And yeah, and it was there's a lot of different stories like that. Because they had to bring their own tools, but this gentleman had a portable table, so we brought it with him, and then it was to the museum. So we come visit. It's a bit farther away from Halifax, but it's worth a see.
Yes.
And if I can find a picture in a minute, I can pop it somewhere. But we talk about, and this is what Victoria included in her book. She included the life vest that was worn by James McGrady. That is in St. John's, Newfoundland. It's not in Nova Scotia. And for a long time, it was kept in cold storage, but now it's on permanent display. And he was buried June 12th. So that's why I say our chronology in Halifax is April the sinking, basically June 12th, because bodies were buried between May 3rd and June 12th. So when people come to visit, and why we have our events in June and not in April, weather's better, beautiful, it's beautiful here, flowers, everything is amazing, and we're still almost within that time period. We actually often do an annual memorial at the ending that period with on James McGrady's burial date. So that's a big deal for us. It's not just April 14th, 15th. It's like that's the start of it for us, right?
Right.
Yeah. Our focus is until June. Yeah.
Very neat. Yes. Awesome. And thanks for answering that too. And then, and then Jill said, George B, he says he will send a sticker with his signature if you send him a self-addressed stamp envelope. So just as an idea for ways that can be done. So
he's actually sent me one before, and I was going to mention, Victoria, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's becoming more popular with authors. And I think it's really a benefit for people like us who get the book and we're so far away from the authors. If they can send something to us, and then we can they're quite lovely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Absolutely. And then Michelle just said good points to Jordan for what she spoke about, and glad that she or what I'm sorry, what and I apologize. Okay, Z.
Don't
Z, correct?
worry, it happens
Z.
all the time.
No, and that's I apologize. That was wrong. And Z, yes. What Z spoke about. So thank you for bringing that up for sure. Yes. And then D said,
I'm proud of you for trying Z actually, because a lot of people, if they're not non-binary themselves, wouldn't even try that. So
yes, no,
thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad that you have brought it to our attention. So thank you. Yes. And then Michelle said, oh no, that we got that one. And then D put up the link to the documentary. And then Merce said this book will probably be my 12th of the Titanic books on my shelf. So that's awesome. So yes. And then Rebecca said we need a movie night. And I definitely agree with that. That was something enjoyable.
There's a Titanic documentary on Tubi, and I can log in and share my screen with you guys if you want. Don't worry, it's completely free, and like I know for the last movie night there was some concern about the movie being an independent movie, and with Tubi it's free with ads, so we can take no talking breaks while they have ads for Tide and other things.
Yes, and I actually have
Good idea.
Yes, I have the YouTube Premium, so that will definitely be something that can be done for sure. So we should talk about that soon. And Lauren, that might be something with you being on social media that you can keep in mind, just to kind of see, maybe what people would be interested in soon, and we can work on that for sure. So yes. And Lauren asked a great question, because just for Victoria, and I was actually going to mention this to you too, because I know there is something in the works from our interaction online, but just about the fact of, what do you have coming up? Because I think the one that you mentioned sounds very exciting, the future project that you have.
So the future project that I have in mind, still very early days, because unfortunately when you're publishing a nonfiction book, there has to be a minimum word count. So I'm still trying to see if there's enough information there for me to go ahead with this idea, but I'm in the early stages of working on a biography about Thomas Andrews, because the last biography on Andrews was written back in 1913. There hasn't been one that's solely focused on him since. And being in Northern Ireland, I have access to his family archives, and I'm about half an hour drive from his hometown. So it's definitely something that I'd love to look into, because he's one of those people on board that I just think he deserves more recognition. And I think his story, even aside from Titanic, how he came up as an apprentice in Harland and Wolff, how influential he was over a lot of White Star Line's designs. Just, he's a fascinating man, and I would love to do something on him. So hopefully I can get the ball rolling once I've got a bit more research under my belt.
That will be so neat. I look forward to that one for sure. So very awesome. And then yeah, Jill said we have a tour of the dry dock on our YouTube. So that's a great one for the question about just kind of the visualization. So she put the link there. So I'm gonna look at that one too. That's awesome. Historian, this is from Scott. Historian L.A. Beatles, who does the podcast Unsinkable, knows about your book. Will you be on her podcast?
Oh, I don't know, but I should probably reach out to her.
Yes.
It's a good idea. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I'll look into that.
I
Awesome.
can put her in touch with like.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a writing question.
Yes.
What would you say to anyone who doesn't have like a historian PhD or something who's looking into, you know, Titanic and wants to maybe poke at writing a nonfiction thing?
That's a good question, Jordan, because I don't actually have a history degree myself. I have an English degree, but I think people wrongly assume that you need to have some kind of official qualification to write about history. You don't. As long as you have the passion and the skills there, that's all you need. You need the skills to be able to look at the sources and to practice your writing. You don't need a history degree to be a history author.
Yay!
I love it.
Because
Yes.
you know, I can get very into stuff. I can hyperfixate a lot, and very soon I'll be in college, so hopefully the doctor's appointment for the accommodation letters on Tuesday, so we'll see if I can get everything done before August 20th.
Oh, awesome.
Please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, big mess, but
You
and
got this
also
though, yes.
what exactly is a book proposal?
Okay. So whenever you go to a publisher, it depends which publisher you go to, but they want to know who you are. They want to know what your background is. They want to know why you're writing your book, and they want to know a wee bit about how you're writing your book. So they want to know which sources you're using, if you're speaking to anybody in person. It's just to give them an idea of, is it worth them investing in your book's journey, if that makes sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
thank you.
Yes.
That's very
Gotta make money.
helpful.
No worries.
And then Dee said, when I visited Belfast in April 2015 and stood at the lock at the times between April 7th and April 15th, I recall the water being very dark blue. Interesting.
There you go,
Yeah.
Steve.
Oh, there you go. Isn't it
Awesome.
interesting? Because
Awesome.
because I remember there was somebody was talking about it, and they said that the water was a sort of a light green color. So that's interesting. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And Jill said that she actually has been to a death cafe and it's really helpful, and that she bought life insurance because of it. And that's something that I think is a great idea, you know, because you just none of us ever know. So
Even that, death doesn't need to, discussions about death don't need to necessarily be all philosophical or emotional. Sometimes it can be about the practical stuff. And that's a good example of that.
Exactly. So
awesome.
Right. And then Murph said, have you been in touch with relatives of people aboard the Titanic?
Not for this book, no.
Yes.
It didn't really suit with the kind of narrative that I was presenting with this book, but hopefully for the Thomas Andrews one, I'm going to get in contact with his family because his descendants still live in Northern Ireland. So hopefully
Yes.
I can get in touch with them and have a chat with them.
Awesome. Yes. I have a random but really kind of interesting, like kind of related, but very like just odd that happened to me recently. Me and my sister do like a little history blog, and I like to write about sometimes it's Titanic, but sometimes it's like other ocean liners and just kind of like just random stories, mostly that I find in newspaper articles because they are so interesting, like the stories back then. And there was one where this just came up this week. That's the only reason I wanted to share real quick. But there was a lady, and she was in a lot of plays or shows that were going on. It was like a little bit after the Titanic. But she dressed as a man and she went on to the Carpathia, and she was actually like posing as a crew member. She was trying to get back to England. And
Right.
This
Whoa.
Captain Rostron actually was the one that kind of gave her a lecture, as in like you can't just like get onto the ship, without having a ticket, or it was just kind of like, what are you doing basically? And then she had to get off. But one of her like relatives actually found me on, I do Substack. I love Substack, but and kind of wrote me and was like, that's actually my great aunt, and was like telling me the story. And she actually ended up marrying President Benjamin Harrison's grandson. It was a really interesting story. And I was like, did you know that she did this and that she made,
Wow.
the Titanic rescue ships captain? And he was like, I had no idea. I'm like, you just never know. Like, people might come across this stuff that are just looking up stuff from their family. I'm sure Dee has lots more of experience with those kind of things, with relatives and kin reaching out for sure, right?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I'm glad you shared that, because one thing that I found in my research and my studies and speaking with people is
Yes.
how often women did just that. They wanted
Really,
to
yes.
sail. They wanted to experience that. One
Yes.
example that actually came to light in the last few years, because I'm also involved with the SS Atlantic Heritage Park Society. I was on the steering
Yes.
committee for the 150th anniversary that happened in 2023, April 1st. So sure enough, there was a young lady and she wanted to sail, she wanted to do this, and her dad forbade her. So one night she cut off her hair and got her dad's clothes, and she left the house and she boarded SS Atlantic. And a book has been written about her. It's called Call Me Bill. I
Oh my
highly
gosh.
recommend it.
I'm
It's a
writing that
graphic,
down.
that's a graphic novel written by
Yes.
an illustrator, local illustrator, who is very involved in the SS Atlantic story. And yeah, she wrote the book. I'll run really fast while you're talking after, and I'll show you what the cover looks like. It's a
Awesome.
very, very interesting story. So she realized in her research that this happened more often than people would have thought. So I often thought about that. Was there any way
Yes.
that we could find anything more about Titanic? So I'm glad that you shared that story. That's
Yeah,
really,
it's
really
so
helpful.
weird. Like,
That's
it's so,
fascinating.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and I do.
yeah, I love those types of stories. Did it happen on Titanic itself with like any of the cabin
Oh,
children, I guess? Do we even know, or is it just like
right. Like, did any, yeah, it is interesting to think about. The only stories I ever heard that even relate to that are supposed stories of, in the sinking of men, like having shawls on and that kind of stuff. I've never heard anything in the opposite, but it is interesting to think about, like, what women especially like had to do in those times to be able to maybe do certain things that they weren't allowed to do. So I wrote the name of that book down because I'm especially with this story I mentioned to you and all the things that this relative of this lady like sent to me. I'm very interested in that. So I'm gonna have to look that one up for sure. So awesome. And then Lauren just asked, kind of related to what we were talking about, do you, Victoria, plan to visit Halifax at some point? Certain. Has that come up? Or
I would love to. It's just it's very expensive going from Northern Ireland to Halifax, but I would love to go. Because I've mentioned in the book, I don't want to visit the wreck just for my own personal ethical reasons, but visiting Halifax would, it would be a dream come true.
Yes,
I say the same thing. I don't want to visit the wreck, but what's interesting is this year and last year they offered it, and it's very popular. Direct flights from Halifax to Dublin. My daughter just did one recently, and we were really excited with the cost. Now, hopefully they'll be as inexpensive next year because Neil and I are considering going. But at the time, I couldn't go with her because the Titanic gathering was the same weekend, and I planned to go with her. And at the time, I could have gotten direct return tickets for $430 Canadian to go to Dublin. That's insane.
Oh,
that is
wow.
insane. We never see this. So fingers crossed that they offer again through the fall. It's supposed to be in October. If they offered again, I will let you know, Victoria, because it would
Please
be
do.
an opportunity if they allow that from there, a direct flight to here. It saves a lot of time. When we went in 2015, that wasn't an option. It was a long, long trip, and like you said, very, very expensive, right? I understand. So yeah, but I'll run and get that book, like I said, while you're chatting, and show you that book.
okay, perfect. That sounds awesome. I'm very interested. So thank you. Yes, awesome. And then Lauren said, oh, Michelle said, because another DNA match option was deemed the wrong number of months for the baby's age, according to the shoe's slightly larger size. So, and she said that was learned on the video posted on the Facebook club. So awesome. And then Lauren asked, I understand that Sydney wasn't wearing a lifeboat, probably because he was so small. That's a good, interesting. Like, do they know, like, was he holding on to something or? Interesting.
Yeah, I'd need to go back and read my own book, but I honestly don't know off the top of my head. But that's a good.
Yes, maybe holding on to somebody, or I know it's so sad to think about, but yes. And then Heather said Halifax originated the Canadian Institute of the Blind because of the Halifax explosion. Please look it up, everyone. I will definitely do that. And
on that, Caitlin Doty actually has a short documentary video on the Halifax explosion, and it's fascinating.
Awesome. I'm gonna look up all, and actually, I will also kind of put these together so that we can send this stuff out too. I think that would be really, maybe like with the newsletter, because we're gonna post a discussion, kind of put some resources and links that we found from this too. So
yeah,
awesome. Lauren said, what other Titanic books do you really enjoy, and have you been in touch with other Titanic authors apart from Steve Hall?
I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but like I genuinely enjoy all the books that I've read, but the one most recently is On a Sea of Glass. I'm not gonna lie, it's very dense. It's a heavy read. It'll take you a long time, but it's so thorough. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
In terms of other authors, yes, who have I been in contact with? I feel bad because I can't pronounce his last name. It's a Russian surname. His name's Eugene. Yes, but he just did one about the wreck.
Yep, that's going to be the next, because September is like the month about, like finding the wreck. So I figured that would be a great one for next month to do that book. Or not, actually, I'm not August, but September. So we're talking about September. I'm working on the newsletter for August right now. So I'm thinking next month, meaning September. But yes, so.
Yeah, his book's very, very good.
Yeah, hopefully maybe we could, I don't know with where he's at, how it works with, getting on Zoom and everything, but potentially, or at least we could talk about the book together if anything. So
yeah,
very cool. Eugene.
I want to say Nesmayanov, but I can't.
Yes,
I'm definitely butchering that.
He wrote a great one just about the wreck, like the different dives down there also for that, which is really interesting. So awesome. And then Dee said the embalming table that is displayed in the East Hants Historical Society Museum in Lower Selma, Nova Scotia is included in Tom's documentary. So that's really cool to know too, for sure. So he and I visited Pat, the EHHS president. Tom interviewed her and filmed the table.
Cool.
So she can share a photo of the table too when she comes back, and that's totally fine. Yes. Awesome. Andre said to the author, thank you. Kind of touched on this before, but just briefly because I'm wondering if they might have joined after. But what did result appealing to you in order to choose this type of perspective about the tragedy?
Just again, it's part of the story that's very rarely talked about, and I'm by no means the first person to do it. There's a brilliant author who's unfortunately no longer with us, Alan Ruffman, who has covered this in depth, but his book was a lot shorter. But a lot of the stuff that I learned about this topic came from a combination of Alan's work and Dee's. And the reason I wanted to cover it was because people don't talk about it, and we wouldn't be sitting here today talking about this ship if the story wasn't as tragic as it was. And I think it's disrespectful, and it does a disservice to those that we lost in the wreck by not acknowledging what they went through post-mortem.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. Absolutely. So awesome. And then, okay, so we got that. And then, oh, Mert said she has to go to dinner, but she will stay connected at the same time. Awesome. Yes. Must be getting a little bit, we're still like at 1 o'clock here, so it must be getting a little later, understandably, for some in different areas. And then Michelle said, oh yeah, like they tried to sneak some men onto the lifeboats dressed as women, which some of those, I think that relates to like some of the accounts where you're like, did it really happen, or was that kind of one of those things where it was like kind of, because I think the six really did a good job of kind of investigating some of those.
Yes, that's a brilliant
claims.
book.
Yes.
Yeah, and from what I understood, it was like logged at like Italian immigrants who were on the ship and anti-immigrant sentiment too. So,
Yeah. Right. So it's like I think, the sixth author, Stephen Schweikert, I believe you say, I think he made a good point in his book of just a lot of those things that were made claims back then. It's a good chance to kind of investigate, these things with the tools that we have at our disposal. And that's where I think a lot of these things where we're looking more at specific things can get very interesting too, for sure. So like he kind of did a look at the claim of some of the passengers he wrote about, like, being able to stay hidden on the lifeboat, for example. So, and then Michelle said, oh, I looked it up and read there was lots of flying debris causing widespread blindness. So, yes. And then Lauren said the On a Sea of Glass authors wrote next month's book, recreating Titanic and her sisters. Yes, I wanted to. I kind of chose that one for August because we've been focusing a lot on passengers, and I think it's awesome and different things. So I thought it would be good for. I'm a little more biased toward like reading about passengers, so I was like, we should do a little more focus on the actual ship because I know there's a lot of people that are more interested in those things. So I thought it would be kind of good to go in that direction, just so I'm not being too biased. And that reminds me, like, if any of you ever have interest that you would suggest a book, we do try to always ensure that the books are factual. We just want to definitely keep to more so the facts. So we really don't do like historical fiction. We might mention those books, but we try to keep the focus on more like nonfiction. And also just confirm, that it's things that have been verified too, because we don't want to be part of, that false information that's out there. So Tama said, I wonder about DNA now and testing passenger effects to see who they belong to. That's a good question. Do either of Victoria or Dee know anything about if that's something? Yeah, because it's like not really as much controversy with, of course, bringing bodies out from the ground.
Dee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a lot of the effects were actually destroyed during the undertaking process because they didn't want them falling into like morbid like collectors' hands, because that stuff would have gone on and they were trying to avoid that.
Yeah,
for the most
and
part.
that's why the story about the shoes is so famous.
Yeah.
Is that the police officer saw them, couldn't bear to see them get burned, and took them essentially. And
Yeah,
I'll let other people talk, but
yeah,
mainly the clothing was burned to there was the twofold reason, like I said, they didn't want any pilfering, and also there was a concern about they didn't want any spread of disease at any
yes,
possible. This was something that was done that was part of the code, I guess. The rules were that bodies had to be embalmed, had to be secured and everything before they could be brought to land, all that kind of thing. But there were many effects that were provided sent back to families and things like that. Not all items were destroyed. It's interesting. The shoes we consider clothing, and the policeman took that. But with regards to effects, for example, the effects of, I think it was body number 41, the actual canvas bag is at the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, but the effects aren't. I don't know if some case stayed with family and some were auctioned off, but no, the effects are not there, but some of them still exist. So I think one was a watch, etc. So in a lot of cases, yes, but there were some things that were, that certainly were kept in the canvas bags with the bodies, and then when they were identified and they were claimed, the canvas bags went with them. And I actually spoke about that just briefly when I did a presentation just before the gathering for the Funeral Services Association of Canada, and that's what the talk was about. Basically, it was interesting. I spoke with Victoria briefly about it too, or in correspondence, because I was speaking about similar things to what kind of touched on what she had been speaking about, but talking about basically the days in the life, the 3 weeks or more in the lives of the embalmers and the funeral directors, etc., who were hired by John Snow and Sons to be able to manage the bodies, and it was quite an undertaking. No pun intended. It was quite a thing. So it's it's interesting. I did speak about that most the clothing were destroyed, but some items, certainly a lot of items were saved. Is it okay? Just quickly, I'll show.
I was just gonna say that. Oh, okay,
So this is
awesome.
Tommy Bill. Okay.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
definitely gonna look that up.
If anybody wants to know what the SS Atlantic look like, that's it. And Bob Chalk wrote 2 books about SS Atlantic because he's dove into the wreck site many times. But this is Lynette's book, Call Me Bill. And as I say, it's a graphic novel, very interesting read.
Yes, and that is based on a true story, correct?
That's based on a true
Yes.
story. The story is, and if you are okay to let me share that one image of John Logan's table. He was the embalmer. Okay.
Yes.
So if I'm allowed to share, I'll try it right now. Sharing is not turned on. Could you?
Yes.
Yeah. I know it's different now. I updated Zoom, and now the whole sharing thing looks different. But anyway.
Yes.
It's the green button in the center.
Yes, I think she's just okay. Try it now.
Try it now. Okay, just give me 1 second. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, this is just one picture. I've got pictures of a group of us went down. Members of the society went down to the museum and measured all the table. Now this is the table. Obviously, opened up when it's folded. It's about the size of a card tabletop. And you see at each end the head and the foot of the table.
Yes.
That was pulled out. That was designed to embalm taller people, and John Jacob Astor was taller. They haven't had to do that. If you look at the caning is in perfect condition. Why the caning was used is because, of course, when they're working with they're working with embalming fluids, there's bodily fluids, everything can run through and get washed. The table is in pristine condition.
Yes.
It's
Oh my
beautiful.
gosh.
Beautiful. It's a
That
beautiful
is
piece of furniture, really, but it is
Yes.
actually an embalming table. It's pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Like that is something, yes, Jill just said it's hard to think about it being used. I agree. And it's like
Yeah.
it's so I have never I'm trying to think, but just seeing it there, it's like, just really brings that story to life in that sense. And I think that would be something really to put on the bucket list of something to see for sure, So, because you did say that it is accessible at that museum.
Yes,
Yes.
as far as I know, each summer they put the table out to sea. Now there's other images I have, close-ups. They have a little write-up about John Jacob Astor and his wife, and it talks a bit about, how they acquired the table. Like I said, with John A. Logan, he was the owner of a funeral home, Ettinger's Funeral Home in Shubenacadie nearby, when he had to use it. So we're blessed that the family, donated this table. It's interesting it's there, but they wanted to keep it in the community. It's not it's not at the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic in Halifax. It's quite far. It's a several-hour drive, actually. But definitely we're seeing, but it's wonderful, because Tom said to me, Dee, I wonder can we include it in the documentary? So it's wonderful that he had the opportunity to include it, because people do get to see it. Otherwise,
Exactly.
it's really hard. So there was, like I said, a team of us. We took a lot of photos for our documenting and just personal video, but Tom did a good job. Yeah.
Yes, that is very awesome. So thank you. A lot of resources
welcome.
people can take away from this and look at after today too. So
Absolutely, yes.
yes. Michelle said, wish they could have saved more men, third class, especially. Yes, definitely understand that part. And Lauren said one of these Chinese men is believed to be buried in Halifax, so it kind of ties into the six. Exactly. So yeah. And then Lorian said that there is an effects bag in the Greenwich Museum in London too. So that's interesting. So but Scott said he didn't see that when he was there he went last month. Okay. Interesting. So
I did too. It's actually in the Prince Philip Maritime Collection Center.
Got you.
So because they have so many artifacts from all over English history of the museum, a lot of the artifacts are in storage in that center and not on display. So there's a lot of Titanic artifacts that get cycled through the collection. And like, for example, I wanted to see Edith Rosenbaum's pig, and it wasn't on display. It's there. So they have one of the tag slips. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I've seen it in the YouTube video that they have it. So
wow. Yes. So
I've seen the pig in some old documentary. I forgot which one. There's this YouTube channel called Lionheart or something that uploaded like all these documentaries they did in the 90s about Titanic, and I watched some of them, and I saw the pig in one. Yeah, but the information is like old, so probably not everybody's cup of tea, but
Wow.
well, all right. Well, that does take us to the end. No, let me see here. Jordan, did you have like another question just that I had not addressed in the chat?
Not really.
Okay.
I did hear on the internet that the number of lifeboat seats that were empty were exactly 472. Is that true? or is it just some number over 450?
You know, Jordan, I don't know, but I'm gonna note that number down and do some investigating, because that's a good question.
Yeah, because basically they put chatbot information up first. And I know it's more of a math question than a history question, but because it was given to me by a chatbot, double, triple check the number of like empty seats.
Yeah, I'd be curious, because I know there was one library I think had 17 people on it, so that leaves X amount of seats free. So yeah, that's interesting. I'll look into that. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I know it was a lot of information. Dee, I had one question because I was making note of everything we talked about. Who did you say was the author of that SS Atlantic book?
Oh, the SS Atlantic book. Okay, there's actually, that one is out of print, but sometimes you can find it online. It's
Yes.
by Bob Chalk, and he
Okay.
wrote another one about Titanic as well. Sorry, about SS Atlantic that you can purchase.
Okay.
And name is failing me right now, but his name is Bob, B-O-B, and his
Yes.
last name is C-H-A-U-L-K. He's
Okay.
actually originally from Newfoundland, but lives in Nova Scotia here and is very involved in sharing the SS Atlantic history.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So, and I really do appreciate your insight today and Victoria. You know, everybody really got a lot of it. I mean, this has been a great discussion, so I really do appreciate it. And like I said, we will be planning. Jill, if you can see me in the chat right now, when is it that we're doing or maybe Lauren knows off the top of her head, the anniversary for next month?
August 23rd, I believe it is.
Okay, yeah, that's what I had thought. So just, yeah, let's definitely plan to do this again, because I think this has been really awesome, to talk about this. And I thank everybody who came and joined today. It's been a really great discussion. So, Victoria, did you want to say anything before we conclude today? And Steve, thank you as well, by the way. Yes.
Look,
yes.
Sorry guys, it's been up here so late here and
No.
Look at the time, it's 3:20 in the morning.
No, you have been.
No, that's crazy, isn't it? Victoria, I saw the a little video which you had online where you were, writing a book there in front of a coffee shop or something. Was that you?
Probably.
Yeah, and I was the other day there. I usually go to go up to the bank every every fortnight or something, and I was sitting there having a coffee, and there was a girl there, and she was sitting there, and she's typing on front of a laptop or something like that, and it reminded me of the video that you were doing anyway. So it's really good. I think you should be congratulated on what you've done. You've done a fantastic job. It's just a book which needed to be written, and I think you've done an absolutely fantastic job. The only other question I'd probably ask you, basically, if you were on Titanic, two things. Do you have a favorite place on Titanic? Is it, I don't know. I don't know. You were in first class, second class, third class. Have you got a favorite room on Titanic? If I took you back to Titanic, what would you like to have a look at?
Just appealing to the ex-smoker in me. I'd love to see like the proper like men's drawing room where they all like congregated after dinner to discuss politics.
Like, you sit there talking about politics and shares and smoking cigars and drinking whiskey and highballs.
Yeah.
It's true. No, that's very interesting. The other thing is that as being a female on the Titanic, if you're on there, and if you're in third class, how do you think you would have saved yourself?
I don't know if I would have saved myself.
Well, I don't know. What would you have done? The ship's sinking. You would have known it, and you would have known where the lifeboats were. and you've got to strike out, you want to live. You're on
Just-
Titanic. What would you have done?
Just run, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like I can share this. I used to have
it's okay.
this silly reoccurring nightmare when I was a kid after watching the Titanic, where because in my family there's my mom, my two sisters, and my dad. So I used to have a nightmare that we left my dad on the ship, and my dad in real life can't swim. So when I was a kid, that was my main concern, that he couldn't swim.
Well, most people back then couldn't swim anyway, but only from the point of view as an authoress now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That if you were on the Titanic or something and you're sort of single and you're at the back there, you knew it was going down, you knew where the lifeboats were. I mean, you would have made a huge effort to try and save yourself.
Yeah, you would.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
Survival instinct.
So how'd you get from third class up onto the boat deck to get into a lifeboat? Because all you had to do was get up there and then a lifeboat, so you're not going to sit there and go, oh, well, I'm going to drown or something. Don't worry about it. I mean, you're going to have a go at it, you and your girlfriend, your mates or something, you'd have a go, wouldn't you? Really?
Yeah, you'd have a go.
Oh, you'd have certainly have a go. But I tell you what, now it's interesting because we're all sitting here talking about things, and I've always speculated that if I was on Titanic as a male, how would I save myself? The interesting thing is that what people don't discuss is how would you get off the boat? Now, they're not going to let you in a lifeboat, but before the bow went underneath, there was the cargo hatch at the front of the ship, and it was over the front. And if you undone it, if you lifted it off and turned it over, you had a lifeboat.
Interesting. So you wouldn't pull a Tony Curtis and put a wig on?
Well, no. Gee, I wouldn't do something like that. I'd rather drowned. But you just got to look at it. You say to yourself, I want to have a go at it. I'm not going to just sit here and, do nothing, and sit there and go down to the smoking room and get into the bar and drink yourself silly on whiskey. But you have to come up with a plan. That's all. And I just thought that, if I was on Titanic or something, if we took the cargo hatch at the front of the ship, which is in front of the bridge, and if you turned it upside down, you had a lifeboat. And in the end, it blew off anyway, I think, when it hit the bottom, didn't it? Because it ended up at the bow of the ship anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is crazy stuff. Look at this. I'm at 3:25 in the morning. So,
that's interesting, though.
Why do I get up tomorrow morning? My wife's going to get up and go to work. And,
you're still going to be up?
Yeah, I usually go up about 6:30, and I'll see her off. And it's good. She goes off, she goes to work, she runs a school canteen, so it's always good because she brings home pies and sausage rolls and, things like that, it's crazy. But, look, I haven't made it over to Belfast yet, and you're over there, and I'd really like to get over there. And I was talking to Bruce Beveridge the other day, Bruce?
Yes.
Bruce has done some work. And I said to Bruce the other day, because there's a convention over in Virginia or something in America at the moment with Joanna Strasberg. And I didn't go over because, unfortunately, my mum passed away a couple of weeks ago. And if that wasn't bad enough, well, if it wasn't bad enough, my dog died 14 days later. So I couldn't get over there. But now I'm off the leash because I didn't go anywhere really over the years because I just didn't want to leave my old dog. And but now there's nothing keeping me here, and there's a couple of places I would like to go. And there was the girl who wrote the book. What is it? 2 Pennies, is it? Susie Miller.
Think so.
Susie.
Yeah.
Miller, so 2 Pennies. So I've spoken to Susie a couple of times, and she said next time I come over, we'll go down and have a look at the dry dock. But what I really want to do is I'd like to stand on the side of the dry dock. You've been down there, have you?
I have.
You have?
Yeah.
You must look at the couple of photos there or something like that and said to yourself, this is where Robert Welsh took the photos. Did that, did you?
I have. There's also a building where Thomas Andrews stayed when he was an apprentice that I walk past regularly.
So, Tommy, Harlan and Wolf, Robert J. Welsh, their photos, 237 I can't remember the other one there. I just want to go and stand there, you know, and just imagine, you know, really what it would have looked like, you know. I think that'd be absolutely fantastic. So, you know, maybe in 2 years or something like that, when me and my wife Christine come over there, I mean, probably, how about if we buy you a coffee or something like that?
I'll hold you to that.
All right, let's do that. All right, so I'll let you get on with it. Pretty soon I'll hang into you finished up and you know when you're gone. But what other last question, I suppose, you got a favourite Titanic photo? Because you know, me and Daniel and Bruce done Titanic in photographs, which you've probably seen.
I think I have on my shelf somewhere.
Yeah, I know that. I can see it. So, you got a favourite photo, mate?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm gonna have a look in the book and see which one stands out to me.
No, that's all right. Now I gave you a photo for your book, didn't I?
You did.
And which was it's certainly cropped down because it was the one which had, yeah, you know that. But if you look very carefully at that photograph and down towards the very front of the ship, the Titanic, and then you can see the fence there, which is running along the side of it. There's two boys sitting above the top of the fence, just near the bow.
Oh.
Yes. Have a good look. Yeah. No, there's two young boys. They're right down near the bow. You can just see the head. Send me an email or something like that anyway, and I'll show it to you. But there's two young boys that climbed up on the fence and they're watching the Olympic and the Titanic. And what I like to think that's me and Bruce Beveridge.
I like that.
Anyway, guys, look, good luck with your book, Victoria.
Thank you.
I was happy and proud to help you out. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sue.
I'll go to bed soon.
That was a good one. That was good. Oh man. But yes, Victoria, would you like to close with anything before we all get off for today?
To be honest, just a massive thank you. I never expected this kind of reception for the book, but because the book is about such an arguably morbid topic, I was so worried that people were going to be put off, but the reception that I've got from people that have enjoyed it has been just really heartwarming, so thank you.
Oh yes, we're very glad to talk about it and glad that you came here. And to everybody, thank you. To Jill, to Steve, to Dee, and to everybody who has participated, because that's really what makes a great discussion and a great book club is all of our participation. So I thank everybody, and we'll definitely see you in August, okay? All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Very much.
Everyone, thanks. Great to
Good
see
luck,
you,
Victoria.
Bye,
Victoria.
everyone.
Great to
Good
see
luck,
you,
mate.
Steve.
All for us.
Yes.
See you
Good
later.
to see you, everyone. Say bye,
Thank
Steve.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Everything's
Bye,
from
everyone.
Belgium.